Today I want to play a game I made up called Was This Nostalgic Thing from My Past Good or Was I Just a Child? Because when you're a kid, your sense of taste and judgment is very different. For example, back in the day, I thought Ask Jeeves was a better search engine than Google just because it had that little fancy butler. Kids are just impressionable. We see a thing and we're like, wow, this is my first time seeing this thing. Therefore, it's the best that's ever been. And on one hand, that's kind of nice. It's how we end up forming these like lifelong nostalgic memories. But then on the other hand, when you revisit some of that stuff, you're like, oh, was I like a mentally challenged child? I personally got into the internet at a very young age, and I feel like I just never got out. The internet feels like going back to visit your college. Like, I get older, but the average age on the internet seems to remain the same. But I would say my athletic prime on the internet was somewhere between 1999 and 2004. Like, I'm still very much online, but not even close to the level of connected I was back in those years. Obviously, one of those big things I was into at that time was internet content, like videos and specifically cartoons. Because in the early days of the internet, bandwidth was expensive. Like, this was kind of before YouTube, and it was really hard to get a video on the internet, let alone a high quality video. So the rage was flash cartoons because they were smaller in size, and people could make them without showing themselves on camera, which back then it just felt weird. And then beyond the internet, I had only like 3 basic channels on TV. So the world of internet content was just fascinating to me. There was a time on the internet when people made content just for the fuck of it, because they thought it was cool. The idea of making money off of online content didn't really even exist. Like, people would just make the weirdest shit they could in their home and then just put it out. And they're like, I don't know where that is now. I don't know who's going to see it. It was just like an animal they let loose in a forest. And there wasn't as much content on the internet, so any sort of semi-good thing that got put out had a higher chance of being seen. And then kids like me, with my friends in a computer lab, would watch it. The internet quickly became this alternative world that was not compatible with the regular world. And as kids, that's what we liked about it. Because the normal world was just boring as hell. As a kid, I just wanted something new and cool. One of the first things I got hooked on was Joe Cartoon. This was around 1999, so I was 10 years old at the time.
Hey man, what's up? What's up, man? Who's your daddy? You know who your daddy is? Huh? It's me. Yeah, I'm your daddy.
This was like innovative for the time. I mean, this guy was a pioneer. It was a dude that made these really fucked up cartoons involving flies and frogs and things in blenders. But when you're 10, shit is pushing artistic boundaries. One of the Joe Cartoon classics was 3 Drunk Flies. I mean, these didn't have like Oscar-winning stories to them. They were just kind of all over the place. Like, we had cartoons that we liked, like Arthur, that had like a plot and story and characters, and then we just had, you know, frog in a blender. So anyway, would I say this is still good now? For the time, it was crazy. It popped off, but I mean, it doesn't age well. Or maybe it does. I mean, how do I gauge nostalgic shit? Joe Cartoon set the foundation of just like how fucked up internet content can get for me. Later on in middle school, me and my friends got hooked on this Stickman series called Xiao Zhao. This was about 2001. I was 12 years old. I think I was in grade 8, so the last year of middle school. And we just couldn't stop watching these stick guys beat the shit out of each other. Some guy just was amazing at animating these stick guys fighting, and it was mesmerizing to a 12-year-old child. None of this shit was on YouTube, by the way. This was on a site called Newgrounds, which for us was like our YouTube for cartoons. And now that I rewatch these as an adult, my verdict is it's actually good. It holds up. You could tell the work that went into this. And I know there's been a lot of this since 2001. But yeah, these little stick men controlled my life when I was 12 years old. I would try to make my own very poorly. I would try to do these little flip books and animate things that way. I tried learning Flash so that I can recreate this, but I was not that good, probably because I was 12. So this one's a classic. This is the end of the world cartoon.
So now we've got missiles flying everywhere, passing each other. Russia's like, ah, motherland!
This is 2003, so I was 14 years old. To this day, me and my buddy Steve from grade 8 still quote this to each other once in a while.
Because the missiles are coming, fire our shit! But I'm less tired. Well, have a nap. Then fire the missile!
After all these years, it's still okay. We didn't have much at the time, so these are the breadcrumbs that we had. One more cartoon I'm going to mention is an absolute classic, and I don't think I can do this video without talking about it. it's salad fingers. Now, this was 2004, so I was already getting older, a bit more sophisticated. My tastes were being refined. In grade 10, in the computer lab, we were huddled around a computer just watching salad fingers. It really spoke to us, you know.
Hello. I like rusty spoons.
It was just creepy as hell. Like, this character was weird. The sound design was weird, the atmosphere. We were watching the elevation of Flash cartoons happening in real time. This set the bar for all this other weird internet shit that we know about today. Do I still think it slaps? I don't know. If I rewatch it, it's still kind of weird. It's really hard to say because back then, just the idea of what I found good, I don't think would translate to today, nor should it. It's still good, even though it's a little weird and kind of slow-paced. I don't think kids would watch it now. Back in the day, this was it. And I'm going to wrap up with one final thing, and it's called pure ownage.
Kyle thinks maybe I couldn't get girls, and I'm telling him I own it everything, so obviously I'll own some girls up, you know, like no problem.
As I started getting older and I started getting into live action, you know, like real people on camera. And the reason I'm including this is pure ownage at the time for me when I was 15 years old in 2004 really showed me what was possible with like character-driven internet video. Because at the time, a lot of online video was like, yeah, maybe people talking to the camera, some really low budget stuff, but this was like a series that felt like a TV show, but purely online.
So yeah, I like FPSs. What can I say? There's nothing like the rush of hunting people down and killing them.
They did so well, they eventually went, I think, on like a real TV network and got a deal. But at the time, it was just a couple of guys just shooting this by themselves with no budget. If you were like a gamer back in the day, this was an OG show. And kind of like the other things on this list, I think it inspired a whole new generation of content. I think it showed a lot of creators just like what could be done. Like, you don't need a big network to make something that was good and that people enjoyed. When I rewatch it now, like, yeah, it's very clearly targeted towards like teenage boys. Like, yeah, the acting is maybe kind of corny, but at the time, this set the bar that I think a lot of people on YouTube still do to this day, obviously. Anyway, that was my classic nostalgic internet content and what it meant to me. Let me know what you watched, what inspired you, what motivated you. Thanks for watching. Hit like if you enjoy this video, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.